Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, joined by my co-host, Daniel Bobo Kurlan. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing fine. A couple days. Unfortunately, the Rangers have had one of their worst losses last week, and of course, that World Baseball Classic coming up.
Yeah, man, as the U.S. team will play a exhibition game against the San Francisco Giants tonight as we're recording this on Wednesday night. So that'll be fun to watch that team get started up. I saw that Jeff McNeil was batting ninth, and Pete Alonso, this lineup is so deep, Pete wasn't even in the lineup. So going to be really interesting to see how that rolls out. And we'll actually get into some World Baseball Classic talk a little bit later on. But right off the bat, man, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. You mentioned our Rangers. We'll also touch on that a little bit later, too, as they finally get started up after a couple of days off that they really needed. They needed these 3 or 4 days off. They'll be starting up tomorrow again in Montreal. But before we get to all that, you and your New York Football Giants had a pretty big day yesterday as we saw the Giants, a big commitment to their quarterback as they signed quarterback Daniel Jones to a 4-year, $160 million contract and also placed the franchise tag on Saquon Barkley, keeping them both around next year to run it back one more time with Brian Daboll, man. You must be feeling pretty happy about that, right?
Yep, I'm pretty pumped up about it. It looked pretty much as I predicted was going to happen. They were going to sign Daniel, tag on Barkley. Pretty much just like predicted. Then let's hope that this then they build on last year, because that was one heck of a run, and I just feel it has only one way to go but up.
I agree, man. I agree. And this is something that, and look, I know a lot of Giants fans had problems with giving, Daniel Jones this kind of money, because look, for guys like me and you and the average Giant fan out there, we're not used to seeing these types of numbers, and we've spent our entire lives having it drilled into our head, what a joke it is to see these athletes get paid that much. But then, when you see guys like, Patrick Mahomes and, Steph Curry in the NBA and Justin Verlander and Scherzer all making over 40 million, you can rationalize it in your head and say, okay, even though it's a lot of freaking money, at least they're the best in the game. Now, when you look at Daniel Jones, and this isn't taking a shot at him, Daniel Jones is a very, very good quarterback, but he's not the best quarterback in the league. But the fact that he's making $40 million is a gigantic commitment and a smart move for the Giants. They had to do this. This is the going rate for quarterbacks these days. It doesn't matter that he's not, Patrick Mahomes or that he's not Joe Burrow. This is a guy that's a very good quarterback for this Giants team. He fits in. He's a leader. He was drafted by this team. They've put all their faith in him. And it's just a really good move for the Giants and for Daniel Jones. And the thing about the cap in football, I know a lot of people worry, oh, what are they going to do with the cap now? They structured this contract where Daniel Jones is going to be making money. I think I saw that it was something around $19 million is his cap hit this year, which is totally doable. I mean, sure, the Giants are paying him, whatever ended it up being, somewhere around $40 million this year. That's his actual salary. But his cap hit's only going to be around $19 million, which is, less than league average probably for quarterbacks on their second contract. So I think the Giants did the right thing. They didn't panic at the idea of a big number, because one other thing to keep in mind, Dan, is that right now the NFL salary cap is somewhere around $220 million. It's going to be shooting up to north of $240 million in the next 2 years. So really, you could knock 10 or 15 million off this contract right now, because it's not going to be as big of a cap hit percentage wise in the next couple of years, right?
Yeah, exactly. I feel the Giants made cap go up. Yeah, they made a good move, especially with a player who to finally get where he thought he would be. And this team is just the way their offense is structured, like they had to go. It's going to be a step backwards if it didn't reach.
Yeah, it definitely would have been a step backwards, no doubt about it. And I heard people trying to make the case for it. And, specifically, I heard on WFAN a guy who I'm a big fan of, Brandon Tierney, saying, and granted, he's a Jets fan, so he's not looking at it from a fan perspective. But what he was saying is, hey, go out there, don't give the $40 million to Daniel Jones, give him the unexclusive tag, let somebody else pay him, get the first round draft picks, and restock this team. And while that is a good idea, I present to you the New York Jets. Look at the New York Jets. They have a pretty good team overall, and we'll get to the Aaron Rodgers talk and all that in a little bit. But look what the problem is. The problem was in this team last year that they had the worst quarterback play in football. The Giants do not want to put themselves back in a position where you're looking for quarterback. Sure, does Daniel Jones' numbers blow you away? No. Does 15 touchdowns and 5 interceptions blow you away? It's not going to. But the fact of the matter is that Daniel Jones was the perfect quarterback for this Giants system last year. He wasn't fumbling the ball anymore. He wasn't throwing crazy interceptions. He threw the worst interception he threw all year was probably the one in the divisional round against the Eagles, that for all intents and purposes probably ended the game. But he went from September to January without throwing a terrible interception, and to do it against that Eagles defense really isn't that big a deal. The Eagles defense is amazing, right, Dan?
Yeah, that was unfortunate. That was we were overmatched in that game, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's not the worst thing in the world that you were overmatched in that game too, because the Eagles have been on this rebuild. Well, I guess not a rebuild, but reloading their team, for the last couple of years now. Really, ever since they won the Super Bowl against the Patriots, and had to move on a couple of quarterbacks down the line. They found out Carson Wentz wasn't the guy. Obviously Nick Foles moved on. Now they have, just a really a much better situation. A quarterback that they drafted, a guy that's going to be under cost control for a couple of years. That's what the Giants had too in Daniel Jones. And it's not the worst thing in the world that they by not picking up his 5th-year option, that they lost 1 year of control pay-wise. It's not, because who knows what would have happened if the Giants picked up Daniel Jones' 5th-year option and still had him under contract this year. Maybe you don't get the season you got out of him. You know what I mean? Maybe not picking up Daniel Jones' 5th-year option this year got rid of that safety net and lit a fire under the kid's ass. And not only did the great coaching of Brian Daboll bring him around and make him a better quarterback, and improve week to week throughout the season, but maybe a lot of it had to do with the fact that not picking up this option and fighting for his football life, Daniel Jones had that motivation. What do you think about that, Dan?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. He was playing and just went and showed his worth right there. And he showed that worth to this extent and earned this extension, rightfully earned this extension that he got.
He definitely earned the extension. You're 100% right. And anybody that has a problem with it, hey, I know that, like I said, the number is a big number. Nobody deserves $40 million a year to play football. But that's just what the numbers are now, In the 70s, everybody thought it was crazy that Reggie Jackson and Catfish Hunter and all these guys were getting paid, $1 million or close to $1 million to go to the Yankees and sign these big contracts. Even when Keith Hernandez signed his extension, everybody thought that amount of money was exorbitant, and that was barely over $1 million a year. I really just think that this is the way things are, done now. These are the numbers that if you are a quarterback and you are reasonably productive, and especially the age Daniel Jones is, you're going to get paid. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, especially when the cap is as high as it is. It'd be one thing if we were talking about the Rangers, where the cap is in hockey right now about $83 million. So if you're going to tell me, oh, okay, Daniel Jones is going to, or whatever, let's say Patrick Kane is going to cost $40 million of the Rangers $83 million. Yeah, okay, then I guess that would be a bad contract. You can't give that kind of money out. But when your cap is hovering around $220 million and a $40 million cap hit is a big hit, but something that is expected for a quarterback these days, it's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, exactly. The situation that they went within the salary cap, they knew this wasn't. They knew it wasn't going to take this big of a hit. They knew the salary cap was going up in a couple of years, and they made a good decision. And it's not. In the end, probably won't work out to be a bad contract if all goes as planned.
Absolutely. And, looking at the Saquon side of it, what do you think of that, Dan? As a Giants fan, would you have preferred, are you happy that the Giants came to the contract extension or whatever you want to call it with Daniel Jones and franchise tagged Saquon? Or would you rather them have done that the other way around and given Saquon the long-term contract and franchise Daniel Jones and figure that out next year?
I think the direction they go with how running backs can be at times over the course of time probably was the right decision to not sign him to that big of a contract and go on a franchise tag.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Because when you see the way that just like you said, the way running backs are treated and paid these days, and not to mention, I know he came back and had a great year. And not only did he have 13 or 1400 yards for the Giants this year, he also was their best receiver, or at least their most productive receiver for the whole year. So he's definitely a dual threat, and Saquon is definitely a gigantic piece of that Giant lineup. But you just can't. You had to lock up the quarterback. Running backs in this league, I hate to say it, are almost a dime a dozen. And I know Saquon is still a great talent, and there aren't many in the league that are better than him. But when you had that option to franchise him at a reasonable cost, I think it's like 12 and a half or 13 million that they got him on the tag for. And you got to be happy with that, man. I mean, that's a really good number to get him at. Unfortunately, they couldn't come to a long-term deal with that. But the thing that you have to remember, too, is that just because he's on the tag doesn't mean that him and the Giants can't come to a long-term extension at some point, maybe leading up to training camp, right?
Yeah, exactly. that doesn't always mean that. It means if they can come to a term, they can do that. If they can't, probably it's a win-win decision they made.
Yeah, yeah, and Saquon is getting the money that he deserves. He might not be that thrilled about being stuck on a 1-year deal and still having to worry about this next year. But then, hey, they could always figure it out next year too. It's not the be all end all. He's gonna. They got Daniel Jones locked up, and by the way, too, the thing about Daniel Jones is everybody acts like it's like baseball, where oh no, you signed a guy to a 5 or 6 year deal, you're locked in there, and he's not going anywhere because you're paying him 100%. Out of Daniel Jones's contract, only 82 million of that. I say only, rolling my eyes a little bit, but only 82 million of that is guaranteed. So he's guaranteed 82 million through the first 2 years of this deal. And then after that, so let's say Daniel Jones stinks this year and stinks next year. The Giants can just cut him after that and be done with it. Sure, there'll be some, dead cap money, and I'm sure there'll be a little bit here or there, but it won't be bad, and it won't be a crazy number. It'll be, whatever, the cost of doing business, and see you later. So really, if you think about it, he's from the Giants' perspective, he's only locked into a 2-year deal. So really, it's like, show me that you can do it again. And, in a couple of years, we'll talk about another extension and another big time payday when he's 29 or 30 years old, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's not that big of a contract when you really look at it in football terms. How these contracts are done in football.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because in football, that's the beautiful thing. If you're a football GM, you can hand out all the contracts you want, but after a year or two, if the thing's not working out, you can just cut these guys and that's it. See you later. Nothing's guaranteed for the most part in football, unless you're Deshaun Watson, and his entire contract was guaranteed from the Cleveland Browns, which is still crazy. And I know a lot of the owners still aren't too thrilled about that either, by the way. But yeah, so very good job by your Giants, man. Very happy that got done. But now we get to the TMZ part of our show here as we move on to my football team. And we're talking about the New York Jets pursuit of Aaron Rodgers. Now, Dan, I don't know if you were paying close attention over the last couple of days. So before this, we'll start off on Monday. Monday morning, the news broke out that Derek Carr, the number 2, I guess you could say, target of the Jets, had from a quarterback perspective, signs with the New Orleans Saints. And Jet fans, not myself included, but Jet fans, a lot of them begin to panic because that was our safety net. Now, me, on the other hand, when I saw that, I actually got really, really happy because if you've been talking to me, and Dan, you have, me and you do this show every damn week, that I've been all in on Aaron Rodgers, right?
Exactly. I would expect.
I
think a lot of.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
I think quite a lot of Jet fans I knew were all in on Aaron Rodgers as well.
Exactly. So we're all, but I got to say, though, there was a large contingent of Jet fans that they just wanted to settle for Derek Carr. And I got nothing against Derek Carr. Derek Carr is a good quarterback. He's the type of quarterback that can, take a team like the Jets and give them, better than average quarterback play and make them a relevant team again. But the difference between Rodgers and Carr is insane. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. You could make the case he's a top 5 quarterback of all time. Now, I don't know about that. He's probably a top 10 at least, from especially strictly from a talent perspective. Maybe you want to throw other guys that have won more Super Bowls over him. But, I mean, Dan, what do you think about that? Would you put Aaron Rodgers in that top 5, top 10 area?
Yeah, definitely. Especially all the that were in contention every year, so he has that experience playing for a contender and that pressure of playing for a contender.
That's a good point too, because a lot of people want to act like Aaron Rodgers was, I know he just came out of the darkness retreat a couple of weeks ago, but people are acting like he's been playing in a dark cave his entire career. The NFL isn't like, Major League Baseball, where you could go play on the Kansas City Royals and nobody will hear from you for 3 years if you're there for 3 years, It like you're in the witness protection program. In the NFL, if you're playing in a market, especially like Green Bay, the Green Bay Packers, you're always dealing with the media, even if it's okay. It might not be, the 5 or 6 guys, whatever you got covering the Green Bay Packers for the papers in Wisconsin and the surrounding areas, but you have national media following every move the guy makes. I mean, he's just like we said, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So of course, Aaron Rodgers can deal with this, with all this stuff. So let me get back to the point. So the point was that Carr is off the board now. Jets fans begin to panic. A couple of hours later, it turns out that the Jets were conversing with Aaron Rodgers on Monday, that they had been granted permission by the Green Bay Packers to explore, I guess not explore trade, because they probably, you would assume that for them to be granted permission in the first place, that Joe Douglas and the Packers GM have agreed to some kind of trade compensation should the Jets and Aaron Rodgers come to some sort of understanding or agreement. So they talked over the phone or Zoom, whatever it was, on Monday. Tuesday, it turns out that at 9 o'clock in the morning, the Jets contingent of Joe Douglas and Woody Johnson and Coach Saleh and Nathaniel Hackett, the offensive coordinator who has a close relationship with Rodgers, all boarded the private jet of Woody Johnson and flew from New York to Southern California and went out to dinner with Aaron Rodgers. They wined and dined him. They told him everything. Now, this is, I don't know if you've seen this, Dan. This is the video of, hold on a second, let me get it right here. This is the video of Aaron Rodgers, right here, leaving. Well, actually, this is the video of the Jets contingent leaving, but so this guy was asking. I'm sorry, Dan. Were you?
They are definitely all in on it. All right, if they're going on this, it's almost going to be certain. It'd be a shocker if it doesn't happen.
At this point, I think you're right. And, you see Joe Douglas and Saleh and all these guys, there's Hackett, leaving this dinner with Aaron Rodgers. Jet fans are crazy, man. I do have to say that I love the passion of this fan base, because it's just so fun knowing that these other maniacs like myself are, I mean, and people found that out where they were going and everything, and they were waiting outside for them. And that guy, he's not a paparazzi. That's just a Jet fan. And that's the same thing with, I saw another Jet fan. There's this California Jet fan who was sitting outside the airport waiting for them to land. There was these other Jet fans that found the flight tracking data of Woody Johnson's jet while he was going cross country, because these guys were posting it online and everything. I was watching in real time Woody Johnson's flight go across. Obviously it's just the 3D tracker or whatever. It's not like I had a camera in there, but we were watching Woody Johnson get closer and closer and closer, and land in California and have this meeting with Aaron Rodgers, just like you said a minute ago, Dan, it really seems like this is going to happen. It's still shocking for me, right? How shocking is it for you that we're seeing this now? I mean, who would have thought that Aaron Rodgers would be getting traded, and not only getting traded, but Aaron Rodgers getting traded to the Jets? That's just a crazy storyline, right?
Yeah, it's a crazy storyline. I never thought that was going to happen. It pretty much seemed like he was going to. Aaron Rodgers was probably going to play for the Packers his entire career. Never expected that, but here we go. It's happening, Jet fans. You're gonna get maybe a couple of years, maybe 2-3 years if you're lucky. Aaron Rodgers. Hopefully you guys get 2-3 good years from him. And hopefully it's not a disaster. Because remember the last time the Jets got a legacy quarterback from Green Bay. Last time how that panned out.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, too, because obviously a lot of people have been making the Rodgers and Favre comparisons. I do have to say that I loved the Favre trade. I was a big Favre fan, and looking back on it, too, I mean, the Jets gave up a third-round pick for Brett Favre. That's it. And it was 1 year, and the next 2 years after that, they were playing in the AFC Championship game. So, look, I can't sit here and act like that at Aaron Rodgers, because you talk to some Jet fans, and you'd think that the Brett Favre trade was the worst thing that ever happened to the Jets franchise ever, and it wasn't. The reality of the situation is that the Jets went into Tennessee, beat an undefeated Tennessee Titans team on Thursday Night Football after beating the Patriots the game before that on Sunday. They come out of that game 8-3, but Brett Favre had that injured shoulder, and that was it. So if Brett Favre didn't get hurt, people don't look back on that deal and having Favre here for a year as bad as they would. And I know you could say, well, still they're going to look back poorly on it. And I get that. But if you look at it, from a fair perspective, you have to say to yourself, the Jets did everything they could to win. And then the next 2 years, okay, it didn't work out that year. They collapsed down the stretch. Favre threw 2 touchdowns and 9 interceptions after that game because of his injured shoulder. Should he have pulled himself? Probably. Do I blame him for not pulling himself? No. And whatever. You can't live in the past. You can't let things that happened in the past, absolutely define and guarantee what you're going to do. And I really think that the Jets and Woody Johnson, and reports came out today that Woody Johnson was the driving force behind this, which, to be honest, I like that. They were trying to frame that like Woody is bad for wanting Aaron Rodgers. The rest of his front office apparently wanted to settle for Derek Carr, which, by the way, I don't believe that either. But I do believe that Woody Johnson badly wants Aaron Rodgers. Like, why wouldn't you want the guy? He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, right, Dan? I mean, is it really that crazy that Woody Johnson would be pushing for Aaron Rodgers?
No, it isn't crazy at all. This is a big one. You gotta make this move. Also, hopefully, you guys don't end up in a situation like I meant to compare with Favre. Hopefully, this time you guys aren't in a situation where Aaron Rodgers is on the cover of this year's Madden NFL game, because we all know that history with Madden.
Yeah, you're right about that. And that Madden curse did come through that year. It took 12 weeks, but it finally got us. And yeah, you're right, man. Just gotta hope that if us Jet fans, we should all just send letters to Madden or EA Sports, whatever you want to say. Send the letters to those guys saying, do not put Rodgers on the cover of Madden this year, because if he gets hurt, we're blaming you.
about cover history. A similar thing as Sports Illustrated. Do not put any Mets on the cover of Sports Illustrated until after the World Series has happened.
Exactly. If you want to put guys like Lindor and everything, Pete Alonso, anybody else like that, feel free, but do it in November. So,
Yeah.
Dan,
Exactly. But do it on the issue where you highlight the World Series that had just happened. That's okay, but not during the issue that's published fresh after the World Series. That's okay, but not during the season. Sports Illustrated, please don't, please don't.
yeah, buddy, you're definitely right about that. And yeah, man, just to finish up with this Rodgers thing, I know I'm pumped. I cannot stop looking at my phone. I've been glued to Twitter the last couple of days, just like me and you always talk about when it's that type of year, and you're just refreshing Twitter and just seeing if there's any updates, seeing what news is coming out from anybody. I haven't cared what anybody's saying. I've been listening to anyone that will talk. I've been listening to Pat McAfee. I've been listening to my buddy Jake Asman. I've been listening to, AJ Hawk, who was on Pat McAfee earlier today. There are a lot of people, obviously Rich Samini has been getting some Woody Johnson updates last night and telling us that they were going out to dinner. And that was, one of the big things they were doing in, I believe they went in Santa Monica or something like that last night. And yeah, man, so it's all coming together, and really just got to hope that the Jets are able to, no pun intended, land this plane, get this guy in the building, and don't let him leave, because it's going to be a really, really fun football season. The Jets are one piece away from being a really fun team to watch. The Giants locked up their two big pieces to stay relevant. So, man, this could be the first time since 2010 did the Jets and Giants both make the playoffs that year? It'd be the first time in a long time we saw both teams in.
Last time both teams made the playoffs, I believe, was the 2006 season, if my memory's correct.
Wow, 2006, and that's when we both got knocked out in the first round, right? The Jets went down to the Patriots, and you guys lost to the Panthers, right?
And I believe the first round we lost to the fucking Eagles in the 2006. Year after, we had lost to the Eagles.
All right. Well, I'll take your word for it. but yeah, man, man. It's been since 2006. Jeez, it's been a long time since we had both teams in the playoffs at the same time. And we got that last year with the Mets and the Yankees. We might be getting that with three teams in hockey this year, because it looks like we're going to be getting the Rangers, Islanders, and Devils all in the playoffs this year. And hey, let's just get it with football again, because when both of these teams are good, and both the MetLife tenants are good, and having big seasons, man, there really is nothing like that. There's a buzz in the city, and everybody just can't wait for it, right?
Yep, exactly. And I could only imagine how crazy the whole New York will be. That Las Vegas might be full of, well, not just a hotel that's themed after New York, but have authentic, real New Yorkers take over Las Vegas next year if all goes as as fan bases of both teams would hope for. So they'd probably have to get used to a lot of New York accents at which, by the way, unlike the hotel, is not a fake New York. Be authentic, real New York accents.
Yeah, that's true, man. And yeah, so what you're talking about the Super Bowl being there next year, right?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, for those. Well, I've but I am aware there is a New York themed hotel there, as I just mentioned.
Of course, of course. And the other funny thing too, that I wasn't sure if you were mentioning this too, because the Jets and the Giants both play in Vegas next year too against the Raiders. So very interesting that both teams are going to have to go through there in the regular season, and maybe there's a good chance they'll be coming back in February, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they'll be it'll be hopefully it'll be one of those situations where it'll be difficult to get extra difficult to get a flight to Las Vegas.
Exactly. Got all those New Yorkers jumping on there as yeah, because we show up, man, when our teams are good, no doubt about that. And a lot of times even when they're not. So yeah, man. So it's gonna be a really fun football year.
Yep, exactly. And I can imagine the phone calls to WFAN for, and even a Mad Dog on his show for those Super Bowl tickets are gonna be would be extra. It'll be extra traffic to get their chance. Marquee.
Oh yeah, man, you got that right. But the other thing going on right now too that you mentioned earlier is the World Baseball Classic. So we do have to move on from football right now, as we'll be touching now on the World Baseball Classic. Man, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Classic. A lot of expectations on the U.S. this year as the defending champions. We won the last tournament in 2017. And what are your thoughts heading into this, Dan? There's a lot on the line for the U.S. I mean, we have a very, very deep lineup. The pitching staff I'm a little worried about after Clayton Kershaw had to bow out. How are you feeling so far?
I'm feeling good going into this tournament. I have a legit shot to win. It would be a shocker. It's gonna be high chance also the first round, because the first round's in Arizona. It's gonna be a lot of setting the DVRs to watch the next day, aside from some of the games that fall on the weekend. Though I think one of the games is a little like a late afternoon starter, so they got to East Coast in the first round. But I know most of these first round games are going to be a 10 o'clock start time for a lot of us out east. So it, but like I said, the weekend Saturday, that one's going to be a. It's a Saturday I'll be staying up, but had maybe drinking the strongest coffee I could find.
Yeah, exactly. And how does that our first matchup is so we play two exhibition games for the US. It'll be tonight against San Francisco and tomorrow against the Angels. Then they'll have an off day on Friday, and they'll play their first game on Saturday night against Great Britain, man. A really, really cool matchup. I mean, how often do you see the U.S. and England lock up in a baseball game? So that's going to be awesome, right?
Yep, that is. This is gonna. I'm looking forward to watching it. I'll be there watching in my room and wearing my probably wear my pajamas because of the time, 10 o'clock, and probably hear me making some noise because of how I am when I'm watching the game. Hopefully somehow Mr. Malunigan doesn't get woken up, because he'll be asleep around that time usually.
Yeah, but who knows? A couple of dingers go out there, and the U.S. takes a late lead, and I think Mr. Malunigan will forgive you if you wake him up from his nap, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think he'll fit. I think he'll. Of course, for all I know, he might probably end up falling asleep on the couch, because when I'm on, because this one, and most of the times, a lot of times I'll be watching in my bedroom, normally watching TV. But the a game like this, I'm probably gonna be I might be sitting in the living room TV for this one. Maybe have some late night snacks. Maybe maybe coffee. Maybe the strongest soda I could find. I don't know. I haven't decided yet what kind of form in the caffeine I'm taking during the game, but I'll be there. I'll be there watching and celebrating a win.
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah. So Wainwright takes the ball in that first game, and like I mentioned, obviously Alonso's not in the exhibition lineup tonight, but they'll find a spot for him. Obviously, Goldschmidt is the starting first baseman, so they're gonna use him first. So that makes sense. I totally get it, especially Goldie. Had that great year last year. He won the MVP. So as much as I do think that Pete deserves the respect, you got to understand that Goldschmidt's got the job right now.
Yeah, exactly. I figured Pete was probably DHing most of the time. Maybe this matchup or sign they're trying to work, try to test out or whatever the matchups for the right-handers, left-handers, whatever they're doing. So probably this one, probably why Schwarber's DHing this one, but probably for you might see their next and later games. You'll probably see Pete DHing a couple of games here and there.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. They're gonna work him in as Dan. By the way, too, have you seen the coaching staff for them? I mean, it's pretty cool that they got Mark DeRosa and Ken Griffey Jr. is the hitting coach, and Andy Pettit is the pitching coach. I actually even saw, I was looking at a bunch of the rosters across the WBC, and obviously another great thing for a Mets connection is that Mike Piazza is the manager of Team Italy. But another thing that I liked that caught my eye was that former Met Masato Yoshii is the pitching coach for Team Japan. Isn't that pretty cool?
Oh, also, it does make you feel old when you see these guys on coaching staffs and as managers. Some of these players you remember, because it's like, does it feel like yesterday? I remember go being at Shea Stadium, seeing Mike Piazza. He probably hit some some home run and that gives the Mets a come from behind win. Doesn't that feel like yesterday? And the same thing when you feel like yesterday seeing like Ken Griffey Jr. being such a big star in baseball. Doesn't it feel like yesterday? Like because these are guys I remember. Like weird when you look when you for example, if you go to the Hall of Fame and you see players that you remember during their when they're active. It just feels weird. I mean, any athletes that you can actually say you remember these guys, and it's also weird to saying how long ago it is that I'm wearing this. I've sometimes shown up to Met games. I'm wearing this Mike Piazza jersey. It's the black, the alternate jersey, the black one, and
Yeah.
and I've had that jersey since my high school days. I actually bought this thing at a motels when I was in maybe ninth or 10th grade. It's still fits.
Oh man, that's awesome. And it is weird, just like you said. Even that's why I was laughing when I saw that Masato Yoshii was the pitching coach for them, because I was like, man, I haven't thought about him in so long. And even Mark DeRosa, I mean, it feels like he was a bench player, for the Cubs or and the Braves just a couple of years ago. Now he's the manager of Team USA. Very, very interesting. So yeah, it's going to be a really fun tournament, man. I really can't wait to see how Team USA does. I hope they defend the crown. But there is one thing, Dan, that I did want to ask you, because I saw this stat earlier today, and it really is a weird collection of players. So I want to ask you this: there have been 4 players in Major League history. Oh, I guess not Major League history. There have been 4 players in United States World Baseball Classic history that have hit 3 home runs. Now, obviously, cumulatively, and I just butchered that word, cumulatively through the World Baseball Classic. So it doesn't mean in one. It just means in their careers, they've hit 3 home runs for Team US. Only 4 guys have done it in the, 15, 16 year, whatever it is now, of the World Baseball Classic. In that history, only 4 US players have hit 3 home runs. One of them is a Hall of Famer. The other 3 are not, but the other 3 are all former All-Stars. If I want to give you I'll give you a little fact about each guy, and do you want to see if you could guess them?
Yep.
Okay, let's go. So, We'll start off with the Hall of Famer. Um, I'll give you three things about each guy. Okay. Hall of Famer, left-handed batter, Seattle Mariners.
Well, one of them I know would probably be Ken. There's a little weird story about that. I don't know if you remember that first World Baseball Classic. Some of the games were aired pre-taped, and I remember they were showing them live, but I had to watch them on ESPN Deportes feed to watch that live. So that's a little fun. That's a little fun hearing it. It's an interesting experience hearing baseball play by play in Spanish. I mean, I checked. I actually checked that out during some Met broadcast. The Spanish play by play. That is something else. If you ever heard what some of the Spanish play by play sounds like for a major league game.
Oh yeah, they put on a great show. I remember the guy that got famous for calling the Sammy Sosa home runs. Remember that? And when Sammy Sosa with the home run, he'd go, "Sammy Sosa, no, 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 no," and
Oh,
everybody loved it.
I have I have memories of that. Seeing those on Sports Center back when ESPN was still ESPN, and that's a whole other story. I believe me, I have a whole thing I got to say about ESPN these days. But yeah, but I know one of them, of course, one of those players that you mentioned was a Ken Griffey Jr. The other one, I think I'm almost positive, was a Chipper Jones.
Now Chipper Jones for what? For the three home runs that I was talking about? Was your next guest Chipper Jones?
Yep.
Well, unfortunately, Chipper is not on this list, but I'll give you a hint about the next guy. Okay. This guy is another big time left handed hitter. Became a DH at the end of his career, but known as an outfielder. He came up with the Cincinnati Reds. He also played with the Washington Nationals, and I believe he finished his career with the Chicago White Sox. This is a guy that could routinely hit 40 home runs, but he didn't really hit for a high average, and he struck out a lot. So if you had to take a guess, who do you think that guy is?
I don't know. I think I forgot. I think Barry Larkin was on one of those teams, if my memory's correct.
Not a bad guess, but I was talking about Adam Dunn. Remember Adam Dunn?
Oh, that's a name I haven't heard here.
It's definitely been a long time since Adam Dunn was around. Now, two other guys. There's two other guys that have hit 3 home runs for Team US. Both of them are world champions. One of them was a very good defensive first baseman for the back then the Florida Marlins. He ended up moving on to the Chicago Cubs, having a couple of big years out there as their first baseman, and then I believe he finished up with the Baltimore Orioles. Do you have any idea who I'm talking about, Dan?
You're talking about Derek Lee. Yeah,
Derek
he had like
Lee.
a
There you
couple.
go. You are right. It was Derek Lee.
Yeah, I was gonna say that one. I figured that guy he put up some pretty good numbers for the first couple of years he played.
Oh yeah, he even had that one big year where he hit like 45 home runs. I think it was his last year with the Marlins. So yeah, you're right, man. Definitely, Derek Lee was a big time player. A lot of people forget about him. Definitely, good job by you for not forgetting about him. But now we move on to the last guy. He was a corner infielder. He played third and first a lot of the time. He was also his nickname was the Greek God. He played for the Boston Red Sox, and mainly most people know him for his time with the Boston Red Sox, where he was on the 2007 championship team. Is there anybody you can think of, Dan, that would who I'm talking about?
I think you might be talking about Kevin Euclid.
Well, you are correct, my friend. It is Kevin Youkilis. Here we go. There we are, right there. World Baseball Classic, United States, Ken Griffey Jr., Adam Dunn, Kevin Youkilis, and Derek Lee. That uniform looks pretty good though, man. Right? I love that United States WBC uniform.
Yep, I love that uniform. I want to buy one of those. I want to buy a jersey this year, but unfortunately, it freaking costs an arm and a leg these days. I would have loved to have got me a jersey for myself, but like I said, the price unfortunately these days for those jerseys are freaking so damn fucking high.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's definitely an arm and a leg. Well said. And yeah, man, I love that stat. I saw that earlier today, and I definitely did not think that Griffey was going to be on that list. So it was very cool that he was. And yeah, the only member of the Hall of Fame on that list too. So very cool, very cool. As yeah, we got a very cool World Baseball Classic coming up now. We also got to get into our Knicks, because we're coming down to the end here right now. But I do want to fit in some Knicks and Rangers talk before we finish up here. The Knicks had a great run. A 9-game winning streak coming into last night, but then unfortunately they get taken down and lose last night 112-105 at the Garden. Now they're heading out west. They play tomorrow night in Sacramento. So, Sacramento's having a pretty good year. They're poised to end their playoff streak, their missing playoff streak. So they've missed the playoffs every year since 2005. That's the longest playoff-less streak in North America. After they end that, which it looks like they're going to this year, then the longest playoff-less streak in North America will belong to the Buffalo Sabres and the New York Jets, who both haven't made the playoffs since 2010. So don't think that is going unnoticed in the Jets' pursuit of Aaron Rodgers. So that's definitely in the back of their mind, because that's something that you want to end. And the Kings will attempt to continue their trek to ending that playoff-less streak tomorrow night. The Knicks are going to look to get back. Unfortunately, they had a great win the other night against Boston, man. Did you see that game? Because that was a great win, and they did it without Jalen Brunson. And then it looked like last night they were a little tired, because that game ended up going double overtime. Quickly played 55 minutes, had an insane game, dropped 38 points. Love what I'm seeing out of that kid. What are you seeing with that, Dan, right now?
But that was an unbelievable win. I mean, I probably went nuts at the TV. Like I think I may have had a couple of beers that may have made me feel like I was at the Garden, but that was an exciting win. Right, just hold on a second while I got to get my power bank because the battery's low.
No problem. And Knicks tomorrow, as they look to just bounce back. That's what they got to do. You bounce back, and they don't have Jalen Brunson right now, and that's something that they really have to figure out. They have to learn to win without Brunson, because he is a big part of their team. But look, you have to be able to get these things done. Now, I don't think, and look, the win against Boston proves that they don't 100% need Jalen Brunson to win every night, every single game. Obviously, you're going to need him because he makes your team deeper and better. But you don't. Now you know that you can run quickly out there and get that A+ game. I mean, obviously, nobody had their A+ game against Charlotte the other night, where they ended up losing, as we see, 112-105 at the Guard, where they had multiple chances at the end of the game to lock it down at home against a bad team, but they just couldn't do it. And it stinks that it didn't work out in their favor. When you're looking at a 9-game winning streak, where 2 of those games are against Boston, and they've been playing top-end teams, and they've been really beat up, you can't blame the Knicks for running out of gas a little bit last night at the end, right?
Yeah, exactly. Also, the Sacramento is always making me remember Steve Summers calling them sack of tomato.
Yeah, you're right about that. Definitely love and miss that Steve Summers, man. He was the best. I really think though that we got a lot to look forward to with the Knicks now. I mean, they proved it. They got hot at the right time. They have solidified themselves in that number 5 role, so it looks like they're going to avoid the play-in tournament. And to make it even better, the cherry on top is that the Nets are sinking like an anchor, right?
Yeah, exactly. The Knicks fans dream. Knicks fans dream. Though at the same time, I really don't think the Nets ever really got a big following here since they moved to Brooklyn. I mean, I don't even think this was a move even a lot of people in New York even wanted. Were even were begging. Were I don't think people in New York were begging for the Nets to move to Brooklyn because I just feel this is pretty much always a Knicks town for years. So I just think just some rich executive just thought that was a good idea as far as I see it.
I think you're right. Nobody in New York wanted the Nets. They should have stayed in Jersey anyway and been Jersey's team, along with the Devils as the two professional teams in Jersey. But unfortunately, they decided to move to Brooklyn, which I will forever blame James Dolan for, because if James Dolan wanted to, he could have stopped that. But instead, they gave him a lot of money, and he looked the other way. So look, I gotta say, Dolan has been a much better owner for the Knicks and the Nets, Knicks and the Nets, for the Knicks and the Rangers over the last couple of years. But that is something that will forever stick in my craw, that he allowed the Nets to move to Brooklyn, because the Nets should still be in Jersey, or the Nets should be back here where I am on Long Island, because that's where they started in the ABA. They played over here at the Nassau Coliseum. Uh, they should not be playing in Brooklyn. Nobody likes the Nets in Brooklyn. The only people that were showing up to Nets games in Brooklyn, aside from WFAN's Evan Roberts, were the people that were just, they weren't Net fans. They were Kevin Durant fans. They were Kyrie Irving fans. They were James Harden fans. There's a lot of people that are NBA fans these days that don't root for teams. They root for players. So now that Durant moves on, a lot of those fans are moving on, right?
Yeah, I used to get a. Speaking of that, I remember getting annoyed with that back in the '90s. Remember that with all the freaking Bulls fans back in the day? It's like freaking. It's like all those days. It's like freaking like really. And then I remember like I think I remember when Jordan made that joke of a attempt to come out of retirement, which I don't even know what the heck Jordan was thinking that time because I felt like he had done enough. It was maybe a better decision. He was able to walk out a champion like that and to come on in retirement on a team that's probably not as good as what he's been playing with and looked like a shell of himself. But during that time, all of a sudden saw like a spike in Wizards gear. All of a sudden,
Especially in the 90s, you saw all those fake fans running around and everything. And now, and it was weird, really, really weird seeing Jordan in that Wizard stuff. It's still funny to look back at his stats, though, and still remember that he still averaged over 20 points a game both years with the Wizards, which is just crazy, especially at that age. I think he was 40 and 41 when he was playing those games. So it just shows how good and how good of a scorer Michael Jordan was. And I know that's not exactly breaking news that Michael Jordan was a good basketball player. But yeah, man, that's very true.
darn it, believe me, us Knicks fans had to deal with unfortunately the losing end of that a lot of times in the playoffs.
Oh, you got that right, man, especially in the early 90s. Ugh, that was pretty bad. But yeah, so as we're moving on here now, and we got the last thing I do want to get to, man. We got to get to the New York Rangers, as finally we're set and playing in Montreal tomorrow, or tonight if you're watching this on Thursday. As it was really good to see the last couple of days the Rangers get some practices in, because as Patrick Kane even said yesterday, for their first practice before, after all these games and everything, that he actually hasn't had a legitimate on ice practice with his teammates since 2 weeks ago with the Chicago Blackhawks. So this was effectively his first real practice with the Rangers. So good to see him finally getting settled in. I heard that him and his family were looking for a place in Manhattan the last day or two. So hopefully he's getting settled in and feeling more comfortable. We mentioned at the top of the show the really rough game they had in Boston, which, by the way, before we get into that, how ridiculous is it that the NHL made the Rangers play all these games in a row with a short team? I mean, we discussed how they suspended Keandre Miller. Okay, there's nothing you could do about that. But then they denied the Rangers an emergency call up. So now you have the Rangers playing with 11 forwards and 5 defensemen. Obviously, Lindgren was out because he was hurt. Mott got hurt. So, I mean, the Rangers were ended up playing about 3 players short. And how could the NHL allow that to happen? They have to do something with this low cap and all this crap because the Rangers were being punished for trying to win. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's just I felt like they just I felt like they handed the Rangers a loss that game. And it just felt like we fell out of it in the third. Like this seemed like un-Rangers like that game Saturday, right? I'm used to those games and just sometimes against at the beginning of the third, like 5 minutes or so into the third, it's like we fall out of it. It's like, oh my god, really? What the heck am I watching?
Yeah, and you know what though, as frustrating and it was, as it was to watch the Rangers and just struggle to keep up with Boston, that there's not we could not have expected anything other than that because it's so ridiculous that the Rangers were forced to play with that little when you're looking at it at first with a 16 guy roster that's supposed to be running 18 skaters out there. You're forcing them to play with 16, 17 guys. How are they expected to play? These guys are all gassed. You have you have Adam Fox playing 33 minutes. You got half these guys, even Ben Harper playing 20 plus minutes a night for because you're playing with such few amount of guys. Now, I can understand when the Rangers did it to themselves for a game or two to try to save cap space, but for the NHL to not allow the Rangers to have an emergency call up is just ridiculous. Now, they've got Johnny Brodzinski up with them now because they finally allowed it. And it looks to me like Tyler Mott might be okay. He was kind of skating in and out. But what did you think of that, Dan, too? They had Tyler Mott get hit with an elbow, a vicious elbow, and the guy gets thrown out of the game for the Senators on Thursday night, which was Patrick Kane's debut with the Rangers. And then, so he gets thrown out of the game, meaning they reviewed it and saw that it was a dirty hit, which it was. He clearly just drove his elbow right into the face of Tyler Mott, and then it comes back and there's no suspension. That's one thing I don't understand. There was no suspension for the guy that hit Ryan Lindgren into the boards, and knocked him out for the last week to 10 days. Now there's no suspension, and he was a defenseless player that's the type of hit they were trying to get out of the game, or at least they've been telling us they've been trying to get out of the game. And the same thing with this elbowing hit, a vicious elbow that knocked Tyler Mott out. As soon as he went down, you knew he wasn't coming back in because it was a direct hit. And it's just crazy that, they're holding the Rangers accountable for the cap space, but they're not holding these players accountable for dangerous hits that hurt other players, right?
Yeah, it's a joke. And man, I was furious. I cannot express that. And it's a miracle. It's a miracle. The a cup or whatever it was survived, and then I didn't accidentally hit the TV because I remember once I got upset and I think I accidentally threw a beer can that hit the TV. But I don't. Not that I don't think a beer can would do damage to a TV, but these days, just a small little hit sometimes with these TVs, and it's like your TV's fucked up.
Yeah, you're right, man. If you sneeze on your TV these days, it can be fucked up. So yeah, you're definitely right. A beer can. uh, I, I get the frustration though from watching this and everything, but I do think that with a couple of days off, and you got to remember too, it's a feisty Montreal team. The Montreal team, the Canadians, they might not be at the top of their division. They might not even be in a playoff spot right now, but they're a feisty team. I even saw against in Jonathan Quick's first start for the Vegas Golden Knights the other night. They had a 4-0 lead in the second period, and Montreal put a scare in them, made it 4-3 to at least made it a competitive game. So Marty St. Louis, another former trade deadline acquisition for our New York Rangers, has them playing pretty damn good hockey.
Yep. I just feel like this one's going to be a highly contested game, and I'm looking forward to it to watching it because we've been too many days without watching my Rangers. Too many sometimes too many off days though. It may have benefited because it finally gave Patrick Kane a chance to kind of settle in with the Rangers because he didn't get a chance to it for. At the same time, I don't know. I think maybe he may have felt it was a good decision. I wasn't quite thrilled of him, Patrick Kane, waiting one extra day to make his Rangers debut that time because I felt that get used to being on the team.
Yeah, I agree. I was definitely a little annoyed that he didn't play that first game. But actually, as a matter of fact, it probably worked out for the better that he didn't play that game. Just, let him get settled in. The Rangers lost those next two anyway. With him, they won the game before without him. So, if they lost that game before, I think I'd be a little bit more annoyed at him. But at least they won. And now, now we're at a point finally where, just like you said, it's been a couple of days. We're all going into a little bit of hockey withdrawal, especially, seeing the Islanders winning these last couple of games and everything now as they've been on a little bit of a run. We definitely want to see the Rangers get going again and get back on one of these winning streaks. The Knicks just had that 9-game winning streak. Come on, Rangers. Let's get something like that. Let's at least get over 5. Let's get back on the winning side of things and close this gap in our division because we're just about there. Right, Dan?
Exactly, and hopefully we'll have a situation like 1994 when both teams that play both sports franchises that play in the Garden were they were going on some really magical playoff runs. I would love to see that again. I'd be excited to see that again. Am I right?
Absolutely, man. That's something that we have to see this year, and it looks like we could see it pretty deep into the spring. And hey, that's going to be a really fun ride. And speaking of fun, man, it was a fun show today. We're just about out of here. We had a lot of fun topics to get into today. But then before we get out of here, though, do you have any plugs you'd like to give yourself?
Sure, my account Bobo for my YouTube account, Bo Daniel Kurlan, and on Instagram Bobo718DK.
Absolutely. Make sure you follow Dan everywhere there. Also, I think you broke up a little bit, just so people hear it one more time. His Twitter is at Bobo103NYC. So do yourself a favor, give him a follow. Give me a follow too if you want at my last name Cramer NY, and also the show account at BSith_podcast. So do us a favor and check that out today. Also on Instagram, Best Seat in the House podcast. So we always doing fun things on there, always putting up our reels and everything like that. So just want to thank everybody again for tuning in and having some fun with us. As always, every Thursday, you can find us here on YouTube. So if you like us, please give us a like. Please subscribe to us. And if you think we earned it, give us a 5-star review on iTunes and anywhere you get your podcasts. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, with my co-host, Daniel Bobo Kurlan. And this is the Best Seat in the House podcast. And we'll catch you next week, everybody.